I'm John Hills. I'm part of the Centre for Analysis of Social Exclusion at the London School of Economics. The book is Good Times, Bad Times, The Welfare Myth of Them and Us. It was published towards the end of last year, although it has a 2015 date inside it, by Policy Press from Bristol. The idea of the book was to do two things: to bring together a whole lot of research done both by ourselves in case at the LSE, but also by a lot of other people who've been doing this, looking at what we know about how people's lives develop, both in the very, very short term, how their incomes vary from week to week, whether if they lose their job, how long they stay unemployed, that kind of thing, all the way through to how things change across people's lives. Do poor people stay poor year after year after year, or do people move in and out of poverty over their lives? What happens over the life cycle? What do we know about the links between one generation and the next, between parents and their children? And try and bring all of that together in one place, but also do it in a way that is accessible to a wider audience than a standard academic journal article or academic book. And so the book, as well as presenting a lot of that data, also has a narrative running through it, saying what these things mean as illustrated by the lives of two completely fictional families that we follow their lives over the last 25 years and think about how they develop in the future, to look at how different kinds of people are affected by both the welfare state as it is at one moment, and how they're affected by reforms to it and what we might see in the future. People have two things simultaneously in their mind when they have, in particular, this picture of an unchanged group of them who are the people who are getting all the benefits, who never benefit from the welfare state, as opposed to us, the people who pay for it, who never get anything out of the welfare state. One side of what they believe, maybe, and what you get when you ask people what percentage of spending on benefits and tax credits goes on unemployed people, where people think it's 4% of the total, whereas, strictly speaking, on unemployment benefit and housing benefit for unemployed people, it's only 4%, a tenth of what people think it is. I think they often see the picture that's often on the front pages of the newspapers, that's often reinforced by politicians, that our problem is about welfare dependency. It's about these families where 3 generations have never worked, as opposed to the rest of us who are hard-working families. And that gives this static idea of a stagnant underclass, if you like, who are all the rest of us are paying for. But at the same time, we all know from our own lives that it's not like that. We know that our children, we ourselves, that our circumstances have varied across our lives. There have been good times and bad times. And we know that for our children. We see younger people struggling in the labour market, taking longer to get work than in the past. We know that actually the things we most rely on and where most of the money is spent is on the National Health Service, is on schools, is on pensions. Indeed, we make sure that our politicians protect those things. They're so important to us. But somehow we forget about that when we're thinking about what the welfare state does, when we're thinking of the demonisation of people who are out of work. And I think it's quite strange that people have those two pictures in their minds at the same time when they know they both can't be right. We're just completing a research programme called Social Policy in a Cold Climate, and you can find a lot of the reports from that on the CASE website at the London School of Economics if you Google to find Social Policy in a Cold Climate. We've just published a set of papers about the effects of the changes in social policy under the coalition, looking at 9 different areas of social policy. There's another one about to come out on schools and education. So I hope people will find those very useful, particularly recording this at the moment with about 90 days to go until the general election. People will find those as a useful resource. And we're also just working on, and we'll publish in March, some new work which looks at how the overall distribution of economic outcomes has changed since before the crisis. So what happened over the period from 2007 to 2013. When we look at what's happened to wages and incomes and wealth and employment patterns, looking at inequalities between groups, such as inequalities between the young and the old, or between people of different ethnicities, or between men and women, but also looking at what's happened to inequalities within those groups, between well-paid women and less well-paid women, between older people who are doing very nicely, thank you, and older people who are not. And we'll be presenting on about March the 12th the results of that, and I hope people will find that interesting.